Now on Indianapolis This Week, the Glenda Ritz for Governor campaign. Big questions surrounding the money she's raised so far and possible election law violations. The race for U.S. Senate, the first Sunday morning interview with Todd Young after he formally enters the race to replace Dan Coates, and changing of the guard for the Department of Public Safety. We sit down with Troy Riggs and the man about to take his place.
From RTV6, the Indy Channel, this is Indianapolis This Week with Rafael Sanchez.
Thank you for joining us for Indianapolis This Week. You can join us right now on Twitter. Join our conversation. Look for our account at Indy This Week. We begin with those possible election law violations by Glenda Ritz, a story that we broke right here on Thursday. It involves the mid-year campaign finance filing from Ritz's campaign for governor. That filing showed only $30,000 raised so far. But we went through the donations and found that more than 24 made during the time the General Assembly was in session. That would appear to violate state campaign finance law, which prohibits a person serving as a legislative or a statewide office holder and candidates for those offices from soliciting or accepting campaign contributions and from conducting other fundraising activities during the legislative budget session. Here's a breakdown of the contributions in question and the amounts we want you to see. 22 individual contributions between January 6th through February the 23rd. The campaign received 4 donations from labor groups from January 6th through February the 23rd, and 2 from political action committees on January the 6th. The total, $8,775. Her campaign did not return calls to us until after our story ran. But I caught up with Glenda Ritz Friday morning to ask her directly about this issue. There were 28 that were during the legislative session, which, as you know, you cannot accept contributions, accept them, solicit them while you're in office. What happened to the form? What happened to the contributions?
So there has been an error in the form, is what I have found out. We did absolutely no fundraising during the blackout period, and I think we have all the data and all of the evidence to support that. So we are going back in and actually correcting what was in the form, but we did absolutely no fundraising. I believe that the contributions that were given were before the period, but I think what we have here may be a deposit date was given instead of the actual date of when the checks were actually issued. So will you be amending this form? And we will be amending this form. We also inspected the filings for Democrats John Gregg and Karen Talion and Republican Mike Pence. We found no similar violations in their reports. We now turn to public safety and the change at the top in Indianapolis. Mayor Greg Ballard announcing this week that he has named Dr. David Wantz as the city's interim public safety director, taking over for Troy Riggs. Joining us now on the program is Public Safety Director Troy Riggs, the outgoing director for the city of Indianapolis, and then the incoming director of public safety, Dr. David Wantz. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
This Sunday, Director Riggs, what will be your legacy in holding the position you've held here for the city?
Well, I hope people realize that when I arrived here, there was some trouble. We worked through those. We were able to reestablish morale, good business principles. Everything's in line. Budgets are balanced. We're moving forward. We think the new mayor will inherit a very strong and vibrant Department of Public Safety. But at the end of the day, I hope my legacy will be that everything we did for the citizens of Indianapolis, to better their lives, to enhance the quality of life, and provide safety. No decision was made without them being the first consideration.
Dr. Wantz, what will be your priorities as you step into this role that Mr. Riggs had?
Well, these are incredibly large shoes to fill. Director Riggs was a police executive at a large department. He was a city manager, so he knows everything about how these things work. At the end of any person's tenure of leadership, whether it's in private industry or in political office, as they get to the end, and it starts to get a little ripply. So the best thing for me to do is to continue the momentum of the programs that have been going on.
So you're the caretaker?
I would say that's a pretty fair, I don't see that as a bad thing to do, but I think keeping the momentum going is the most important part of this.
But what do you see as the priorities? Because there's a lot of things that all his agencies, I'll call them his until he leaves, budgets, there's police departments, there's some violence in the city. How do you focus on those things? Because you have to be more than the caretaker. caretaker.
No, of course not. So I think they're mechanical and strategic things. The mechanical things are the budget and the day-to-day operations, and we have experts in this city who do that. I don't think anybody else does it better than our police, fire, EMS, and DHS folks do. But then there are the strategic things, and these are things that I not only understand but appreciate. The 6 hotspots are hugely important. You can't just go in and pull out all the bad guys because you still have a neighborhood there. So as Director Riggs has said, look, we need a comprehensive way to handle those neighborhoods. That's huge. The pilot for that was done down at University Heights, and I had a front row seat to see how that happened, where all the neighbors came together to try and make this work. And so I'm really happy to see that that's working here, and I will absolutely continue to make
Director Riggs, you've been about data. I mean, you've been about people first, but data as well,
right.
Driving the resources. Is that key for any future administration? Because we're now in a political season. We're hearing a lot about returning to community policing. Is there a balance between data and community policing, or are they one and the same?
They're one and the same, and unfortunately, a lot of times when people talk about community policing, they talk about programs. We're talking about a philosophy, and data tells us the suffering that people are going, and also gives us some misnomers. It tells us really what's happening in the community. Numbers that we have not seen in the community before that we've really been focused on, 30 to 40% of all those arrested have some type of mental illness. We have to do better as a city. I don't think a civilized society arrests their mentally ill. We have to have that discussion. We have to have the discussion about the lack of education, the lack of food. All those issues are the root causes of crime. We can't just focus on the after effects of crime. If we want to be serious as a city and as a nation, we have to focus on these things for long term, and it begins with feeding individuals, making sure they have the rights to succeed in this society.
Dr. Wants, you go to the City County Council and say, well, listen, those are all good things to do, but those require dollars.
Absolutely.
None of that is free, even though you have a lot of partners that want to participate in the 360 initiative. That requires some funding. So when you assume that position, will you have to go to Maggie Lewis and the council and say, listen, we need money?
Absolutely. I think the added piece is that...
Absolutely to more money, or absolutely you're going to go to the council to ask for more money?
Absolutely, I'm going... Well, probably both.
Okay.
Probably both. I have to be able to make the argument. I think the added piece is that I'm coming in as a citizen, and I'm going to say, look, as my review of this, I can tell you this makes perfect sense to me, and I ought to be able to explain it to just about anybody and have them go, that makes sense. Police cameras, really good example. Absolutely everybody understands that those cameras are important in providing safety for the police officer and for the citizen, but also to be able to tell the story about what happens. It's not enough just to try to recreate events once they're done. It's really important to have it, to be able to see what happened on the scene.
Director Riggs, last question to you. Do you think we will get the funding for the extension of the pilot program for these police cameras that are really helping police departments across the country?
I do. We have really taken a meticulous approach to make sure that we'll spend taxpayer dollars wisely. I was invited to D.C. Actually, they paid for my way to D.C. to have a national discussion about this early on, way before Ferguson. We have tested the body cameras. We'd like a certain brand. We're going to have to do a request for proposals. But at the end of the day, in the budget presentation that will happen in October that we're putting together now, there will be an additional ask for funding for body cameras to start supplying our officers.
How much money will that cost?
We're probably looking like initially probably somewhere between $1.5 and $2 million.
Is that for every officer, or is that for a limited amount of officers?
We're looking at starting that in the patrol division.
So, Dr. Wants, I think you have already the budget.
It's a lot of money.
A lot of money. Director Riggs, incoming Director Wants, thank you so much for your time. Please come again.
Thank you.
We'll be talking to you soon. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, sir.
Coming up, the race for U.S. Senate and the new candidate on the ballot. The first Sunday morning interview with Todd Young after his announcement is next on Indianapolis This Week. Welcome back to Indianapolis This Week as we move to the race for U.S. Senate and a new candidate in the race this week. 9th District Congressman Todd Young formally launching his campaign after raising more than $1 million for his campaign during the past 3 months. And now he's here with my colleague Jason Fechner for his first Sunday morning interview as candidate for Senate.
We're joined today by Congressman Todd Young. Congressman, thanks for being here.
Great to be with you.
It's been an exciting last couple days for you. Tell me what's gone on the past couple months behind the scenes to get you to this point.
Well, I'll tell you, I didn't anticipate Senator Coates announcing his retirement some months ago, and so after I was approached by countless Hoosiers encouraging me to take a look at this opportunity, after I consulted in depth with my wife and we prayed on this, and we ultimately came to the conclusion that this is the best way for me to serve the people of Indiana. There is a genuine need, based on what I'm hearing from people, for responsible conservative leadership in Washington, D.C. and in in the United States Senate in particular. And so my emphasis moving forward will be on creating more jobs and ensuring that all those jobs pay well and turn into meaningful career opportunities for Hoosiers, and to ensure that Hoosiers are safe and secure, and something the U.S. Senate is a great position to offer that sort of leadership.
Your thoughts on the job that Senator Dan Coats has done while in Washington?
I have great respect for Senator Coats, and I think he's been a very effective United States Senator. He's a conservative. I happen to be a conservative, and moving forward, my emphasis will be on offering responsible conservative leadership with a focus on jobs and the economy, and also drawing on my military experience at the Naval Academy and in the Marine Corps, safety and security.
What have you learned while in Washington on Capitol Hill that you might not have learned before you were elected the first time as congressman? What's going on in Washington right now?
You know, I'll tell you, one of the things I've really learned, there are a lot of good people, both in the House and in the Senate, but it's very difficult to get bills passed into law these days. It's very difficult to get bills passed out of the House, but I'm proud that our office has done it on multiple occasions. We were able to advance a bill that would eliminate some of the job killing and wage reducing provisions within Obamacare. We're also able to advance a regulatory reform bill in past years, and we'll do so again later this month. So my hope is that these bills that lie dormant over in the U.S. Senate and inhibit job creation and wage growth can be advanced with my leadership in the U.S. Senate on behalf of Hoosiers.
Let's talk about the Republican race going forward from here right now. Why should Republicans in the Hoosier state vote for you rather than Congressman Marlin Stutzman or Eric Holcomb right now?
Well, Hoosiers should vote for me because I reflect their values and the type of leadership they want. They want responsible conservative leadership. They want a very intense focus on creating the atmosphere where more jobs can be created and incomes will grow, the sort of things that, frankly, my wife and I want for our 4 kids. They want safety and security, and Hoosiers seem to understand what I learned at the Naval Academy and in the Marine Corps, which is we have to stay engaged in the world, economically, diplomatically, and yes, even militarily. And so that will be my point of emphasis, and I think it'll be a message, a winning message, against the person I defeated back in 2010, Barron Hill, who is the Democrats' nominee.
And what did you learn from that race, running against Barron Hill then? If you are indeed the GOP nominee going forward from that point, what can you take away from that race in 2010?
I can take away that Barron Hill is a fighter. He'll stop at nothing to try and win, and I have a certain respect for fighters. I, too, am a fighter. That, I believe, is why we won that very difficult race after Barron had won the previous race by 18 points. I've earned the trust and support of people throughout the 9th Congressional District and beyond by offering a form of responsible conservative leadership. We've brought new people into the party and also earned some Tea Party support. So we need a broad tent within our party. I believe I will run that sort of issues-based campaign focused on jobs and safety and security, and I think that'll take us to victory next year.
You have just, of course, announced your campaign to run for the U.S. Senate. Let's talk about the campaign itself while we have a few seconds left here. Take me out on the trail. Where are you headed? What are you doing?
Well, we'll continue to amplify our message by speaking to individuals like yourself, but more importantly, we're going to spend a lot of time on the ground throughout every corner of this state, something I've taken pride in doing while in office. Have only spent 1 weekend in Washington, D.C. Since I've been in office. Moving forward, we'll be on the road incessantly, delivering this message of this hopeful, optimistic, constructive message of jobs and opportunity, of safety and security, and of responsible conservative leadership.
U.S. Senate candidate, Republican Congressman Todd Young, thank you for being here this morning.
Thanks so much.
Raphael?
Jason, thank you. Todd Young's decision sets off another chain of dominoes to see who will take over his seat in Congress. Indianapolis This Week's Katie Hines is following that.
The race for Indiana's 9th congressional district continues to take shape this week. Representative Todd Young announced that he'll seek the U.S. Senate seat vacated by Senator Dan Coats. His announcement has spurred a flurry of activity for the seat he'll be leaving in the U.S. House of Representatives. So far, we know Attorney General Greg Zeller has filed paperwork with the FEC to run. State Senator Erin Houchin announced on her Twitter page she's interested in the office, and State Senator Brent Waltz has created a website, also announced a tour of the district in the upcoming weeks. Raphael.
Katie, thank you. So as of this Sunday, Indiana will have 2 open seats in the U.S. House in the 2016 election. Coming up, the race for governor, and to get the money to fund the campaigns. Our political insiders ready to break down the fundraising numbers and answer what is next for the Ritz campaign. Welcome back to Indianapolis This Week as we welcome in Republican Jen Hollowell, of course, Dan Parker, and former State House reporter Mary Beth Schneider. Let's talk about the race for governor and the money, the moolah. The numbers out this week showing that Glenda Ritz raising $30,000 compared to $1.6 million for Mike Pence, $1.7 for John Gregg, and now all the confusion about when her donations came in actually. Let's start with you, Jennifer. What does this mean about the Glenda Ritz campaign?
Well, first of all, it's very embarrassing for them. $30,000 is really, really an embarrassing number. But on top of that, at least a quarter of that money was accepted illegally, as we've found out. She was receiving contributions well into the legislative session, which is a violation of the law.
She's called it a clerical error which she plans to fix.
I mean, that doesn't pass the smell test. There's no way it's a clerical error. It happened multiple times. But, you know, one thing she could do is show copies of the checks and deposit slips, and then we'll know. But
should that happen?
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if it was a clerical error, that should have been said yesterday, and there should have been details today if they were on top of the situation. I have to agree with Jennifer. I mean, this is a serious problem for that campaign, but probably even a bigger problem was the lack of money that they raised. And she has serious problems in the primary, and she'll probably have problems in front of the Indiana Election Commission.
Yeah, I mean, credibility issues in both ways here, you know, as a candidate and also in what she's saying about this, you know, the filing problem, the illegal money, because they've said a couple of different things, and, you know, when you're in trouble, the best advice is probably to stop talking. They should have consulted an attorney or an election law expert before they came out and said something, because I think they've now gotten themselves in potentially more trouble.
But you've covered a lot of these campaigns. Have you ever seen anything like this where they don't know when the money was deposited or when it came in?
I have, but not probably at a campaign of that level. A lot of times you see these kind of things with first-time state rep candidates. She wants to run for governor, be in charge of the state's budget and the state's money. And honestly, checks sat around. When you only have $30,000, you aren't not letting money sit around. You're depositing it in your account. So she probably could not have had, I don't think, a worse rollout. And it's going to be hard for her to change the image, frankly. But I was also interested, and maybe I'll get into this too, is John Gregg showing actual strength, or is that just union backing and they're maxing out early and we're not going to see much more? I'm really wondering if he's got legs or not.
Well, there's certainly a big chunk of union money that was in that number, which is also more bad news for Glenda Ritz. And this issue with her now, I think, just exposes the incompetence of that organization. And there are a lot of Democrats who have thought that she's not ready for prime time. Right. Leave her where she is, and I think that just makes it a harder case for her.
The big issue for Glenda Ritz, there's still time, but if she does not get a large infusion of cash in this next 6 months, this primary may be over by January. She needs a big check from ISDA or NEA or AFT. John Gregg's money, he had a really good week last week when the numbers came out. He had a really good week this week with the problems related to Glenda Ritz. He's going to have to show deeper support amongst the business community. Now that he has a large chunk of labor money, he now needs to broaden his base.
Another big story this week, Reverend Charles Harrison saying he will not run for mayor of Indianapolis despite tons of speculation that he was jumping into the race. How does this change the November election? And Jen, I know that you stand for Republican Chuck Brewer, but were you folks concerned at all that he was going to split some votes, take some votes? His name recognition is pretty high.
Well, first of all, we have a lot of respect for Reverend Harrison, as I think most people do. He plays an important role in this community, and if he had gotten in, it would have changed the dynamics of the race. But that he hasn't, we are in the same campaign that we were already prepared for. So really, there is no change from our strategy standpoint.
Dan Parker, Democrats concerned at all? Would he have been the spoiler? Would he have taken votes from the Democrat, Joe Hogsett, since the Reverend is a Democrat as well?
No.
No.
I mean, it wouldn't have changed the race at all. Joe Hogsett is running a textbook front-runner campaign. He's putting his issues out there. He's on television. He's raising money. He's getting around the county. It wouldn't have changed anything. I mean, the one thing about the Reverend, who everyone in every party has deep respect for, was we may now never know who paid to get him on the ballot. If somebody doesn't disclose that in October, then someone's going to have a serious problem.
This could have, though, had some impact, don't you think, on splitting some of the African-American vote for Joe Hogsett? I think he needs to have everything come together so you don't avoid another Mayor Ballard situation where somebody coming out of nowhere.
Harrison would have created some difficulties for Hogsett, and Democrats knew that, and that's why there were a lot of Democrats who I think went to Reverend Harrison and people around him and encouraged him not to run. So I think absolutely it would have impacted them, but you know, like I said,
there was talk that Republicans were behind this whole website issue and the Run Reverend Run.
The website disappeared very quickly the other day.
Yeah, was that just bad rumors, or
I don't know who was behind any of those efforts.
Okay. The conversation between our insiders continues all the time on Twitter. Check out their Twitter handles and give us your opinion. I want to hear from you right now. Dan, Jennifer, Lara, Abdul, and Mary Beth throughout the week. And while you're on Twitter, make sure you follow our account. That's @IndyThisWeek, and be the first to get political news and reaction 24/7. Indianapolis This Week returns right after this. Thank you for joining us for Indianapolis This Week. Amid all of this heat, we remind you to take precautions when you're outside. Watch out for your neighbors and your pets as well. And stay with our RTV6 app for full Storm Team 6 updates throughout the day. For Katie, Jason, and our entire Indianapolis This Week team, have a great Sunday, and we'll see you next week.